Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you all have enjoyed the good food served. I guess it might be some hard to take on from a heavy lunch, but especially now that we are just a few hours before the most exciting Cata night. Well, Kisnan, we have been hearing a small joke from you almost every day since the day one. I'm sure that you may have something left, maybe one more little thing left in your bag?
No, not really.
I'm sure you must be having it.
You look so confident and sure about it.
As always.
No. You know, my friend, there are only two things which are certain for life, which are death and taxes, right? Okay. I remember one, but it's not my joke. It's from Nigeria. And since our next moderator will be coming from Nigeria, let me just share that with you. Under your correction, please. So you know, in life, there are only two things involved. It's either you're a man or a woman. If you're a woman, you're safe. But if you're a man, there are two things involved, which are, it's either you're a civilian or a military. And if you're a civilian, you're again safe. But if you're a military, again, there are two things involved. So you see, it's a matter of two things being involved. So I'm not going to continue on that because I'm going to destroy the joke of the one who did it is Basket Mouth from Nigeria. So I recommend you to go for that session on YouTube. You can have it. But we're just going to continue with the session itself.
Thank you, Kisnan. So let's take off from that two options that you're giving from every now and then. Well, now we will be fully engaged into this last session of this 44th Cata Technical Conference, which will focus on tax administration, good practices, and guidance on promoting tax good governance and cooperation. We are privileged to have a distinguished experts who will share the insights of the subject matter. Kisnan, could you please lead us further to this discussion?
Yes, of course. So the moderator for this session is none other than Dr. Titilola Akindende, Executive Director, Local Government Revenue Initiatives, International Center for Tax and Development, where she leads the development of policy-relevant research, knowledge, expertise, and tools to support governments to raise more local government revenue more equitably and fairly. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's join our hands together and welcome Dr. Titilola Akindende. We also have the pleasure to introduce to you our presenters for this session. Ms. Nozila Mat Arbak. Ms. Ruff James. And last but not least, Mr. Mamad Faisal Uzirali. So, Dr. Titilola, I hand over the floor to you.
Thank you.
Hello. Bravo. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me say a big thank you to Dr. Esther Koisen for the opportunity to serve on this panel. I want to also thank all of Cata's staff and our very gracious host, the Mauritius Revenue Authority, for putting this excellent conference together and taking such good care of us while we've been here. So thank you very much indeed. For those of us who've never heard about the Local Government Revenue Initiative, LOGRI, where I work, it is an initiative of the International Center for Tax and Development, the ICTD. My colleague Awa is here, and is based at the Monk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy of the University of Toronto. LOGRI is unique because it is an applied research initiative which works in the intersection between research and practice and aims to support governments in Africa and South Asia to raise revenue more equitably and in ways that promote transparency and accountability. So, we've heard quite a bit this morning about compliance, and as tax administrators, I'm sure we're all agreed that compliance is fundamental for any tax system. It involves getting people to adhere to the tax laws and regulations, including timely payment of their tax liabilities. A high rate of voluntary compliance ensures that tax authorities are able to raise revenue, which in turn enables government to plan and deliver much-needed services to taxpayers who are also enabled by the same system to contribute fairly to the services that they benefit from. So it's kind of like a win-win thing when it works well. However, across countries, compliance is variable. And for many of the countries where we work at LOGRI, we find that compliance is very low, which results in unequal distribution of the tax burden and ultimately undermines the overall fairness and effectiveness of the tax system. Through our work in LOGRI, we have observed some key challenges. As I said, we work in Africa and South Asia, so some of you will really identify with some of these things. We've noticed a number of challenges, and I think one of the key ones is public perception and trust, which is really about how the public sees the tax administration and its government and how much trust it chooses to vest in the government. And this in itself is actually driven by a number of factors, one of which is the weakness or weak transparency and accountability of the tax administration. That's one of the things that we've found really impedes building that trust in the public. There's also the perceptions of inequity and unfairness, where systems are not progressive, perhaps, or selective in enforcement, where not everybody gets chased when they don't pay their taxes, or where the coverage of the tax administration or the system is limited. You find that it just promotes that perception that things are inequitable, unfair, and therefore people are less willing to comply. There's also limited public engagement. We've heard so much about how much engagement is going on, which is a really positive step. And then in many of the countries that we've worked in, we've also noticed a very deep distrust of government and its institutions, which again is driven by so many other factors, which I won't go into. There are other factors that also affect compliance. One of them, again, that we found is the lack of reciprocity and the broken social contract. It's like a chicken and egg. I don't get any services, so I won't pay. But then if you don't pay, you don't get any services. So where do we start? We've also noticed very high compliance costs in many cases. So I was really pleased to hear about all the technology and digitalization that you're supporting your tax administrations with. They've been excellent. And then finally, one of the very key one, which was touched on earlier today, is the weak and implausible enforcement threat. So where taxpayers are not convinced that you have the ability to chase them and make them pay, they just won't pay. And we find that this is driven by some factors. In one of the countries we've been in, Malawi to be precise, taxpayers don't pay their property taxes. They're taken to court by the tax authority, but then they rush and pay a little amount towards the bill, and then the court process has to halt because the law says so. So the law in that case is also causing problems with the credibility of an enforcement threat, which is really important if you're going to drive up voluntary compliance. So all of these approaches, all of these challenges have various ways you can tackle them. And today, our speakers will be telling us from their different experiences of all the strategies and unique ways that they've been trying to sort of address these problems. So they will focus on what are the solutions that they've trialed and what we're learning from those solutions. So without much further ado, I will introduce the panel. Sorry, bear with me. Here we go. So I have as my first panelist, Ms. Nozila Arbak, who is Director of the Tax Audit Policy Section of the Tax Compliance Department at the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia. Ms. Nozila started her career at the Inland Revenue Board of Malaysia in 2001, with handling tax collection matters and having worked in various capacities, including as a tax investigation officer for more than 10 years, and as a tax policy consultant, she ventured into tax auditing within the transfer pricing and international tax planning space, becoming specialized in examination of group tax planning. A seasoned speaker within Malaysia and internationally, in addition to leading policy on tax audit, she holds an additional portfolio to oversee the overall implementation of the TCGF program, which is one of their initiatives, and she will tell us about them shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, Nozila Arbak.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all. Thank you, Doctor, for very much kind introduction. I'm very delighted to be here today to present this and share the journey of IRB in promoting good tax governance and cooperation in Malaysia. Please bear with me. I know we have Cata night tonight, we have catamaran cruise tomorrow, and we're just having our lunch just now. So I'm going to share it, and I'm trying to make it short and precise. In the journey to promote good governance and cooperation for tax compliance, we believe that a combination of both voluntary compliance measures and some mandatory measures should be part of our policy setting. For RBM, the tax policy landscape and for good governance escalated since year 2019. Forgot. Sorry. In our journey to promote the good governance, we can see important policy changes and programs which focus on the importance of transparency in reporting and data gathering. The landmark tax policy and programs changes in Malaysia includes promoting voluntary compliance through the implementation of 2 stages of voluntary disclosure program. The first one was in 2018, and the second one was in 2023 and just ended on 31st May 2024. The disclosures were accepted with good faith, and participants of the program will be exempted from any audit or investigation exercise on the years of assessment covered in the SVDP program. These programs contribute to preparing the landscape of transparency and openness between IRB and the taxpayers. The next effort was on the changes to transfer pricing environment. The rules were updated as Transfer Pricing Rules 2023, aiming for transparency of reporting the related party transactions with focus on additional mandatory information to be included in the TP documentation. The availability of relevant data, which is much needed to foster better relationship between IRB and taxpayers, relying on enhancements of the knowledge and understanding of taxpayers' business and industry. Another step aiming for data accuracy and transparency was the mandatory transmission of business transactions data by implementation of e-invoicing reporting with effect from 1st August 2024 for large companies with more than 100 million turnover. Apart from that, starting year of assessment 2020-25 next year, we will having a mandatory requirement for digital submission of certain other documents such as audited reports and detailed tax computations to be submitted through the Malaysian Income Tax Reporting System, MITRS. This mandatory digitalization measures will contribute to boost changes to tax compliance landscape and helping IRB to have enough data for analyzing our taxpayers' compliance level and grouping, which will then enable us to create targeted compliance activities. With all the measures in place to set the environment for better transparency and openness, IRB has launched our tax corporate governance framework on 1st March 2022, with the pilot project runs from 1st June 2022 until 30th June 2024, and the full implementation phase has started from 1st July 2024. Ladies and gentlemen, during the pilot project, we offer highly compliant taxpayers to enter into the program and work hand in hand with them in preparing their TCG documentations. We have 11 companies who joined the program for the pilot project, and 7 of them has been awarded with authentication certificate, which give them the benefits of having a dedicated tax officer and no audit and investigations for a period of minimum 3 years. The rest of the companies are now in second round of the review before we conclude the process with them soon. In full implementation stage, IRB's TCG program are applicable to companies having 3 important criteria. First one is actually companies with turnover of more than $100 million ringgit. Second, the compliance taxpayers in submission of tax return, payment of monthly tax installment, and payment of balance of tax payable. And the third criteria is actually for the company. The company should also have an established tax control framework in place. The overall processes of TCG program will involve 5 steps, which will take around 8 to 12 months to complete. The first stage is for the taxpayer to get ready and assess their governance position by reviewing its tax strategy, current tax risks, and control positions. If the business are already ready to join and completed its self-review report, they can submit the participation form to IRB to get confirmation on their eligibility criteria. The taxpayer can then proceed to appoint an independent reviewer upon confirmation of the eligibility to participate. The independent reviewer is expected to prepare a detailed report on the level of tax governance applied within the taxpayer's organization. Completed self-review report and independent review report with supporting documents need to be submitted to IRB within 6 months from the approval of participation form. At stage 4, IRB will conduct 2 review phases, the adequacy review and effectiveness review. During the adequacy review process, the focus will be on the application of 6 tax corporate governance principles as required in our framework and guidelines, which should be embedded in the governance structure of the organization. During the second review, the effectiveness review phase, it will ultimately dive in the overall implementation of TCG framework in daily operation, with special attention on the issue of substance over form. At this stage, we are focusing on the 360 degrees application of tax strategy, starting from the communication of strategies set by the BOD to the employees, the tax culture embedded in the environment of business, until the process of communicating the result of tax risk control by way of escalating tax risk to the BOD where necessary. Participants who passes both review stages will then be awarded with authentication certificate, which with a tailor-made terms and conditions. The certificate will also note that the 3 years of assessment applicable for exemption of audit and investigation process. So, ladies and gentlemen, within the authenticated period, the taxpayer are expected to submit confirmation of compliance by submitting annual independent review report within 6 months after the end of each assessment year. The taxpayer will have to engage with dedicated officers in the event of any changes to the business which affect their organization structure and governance structure, or whenever they need to have consultation over any tax issues. Dedicated officer will act as a single point of contact to link the taxpayer to the relevant department and to support the taxpayer's business in taxation matters. In the event taxpayer wants to renew their participation, they need to apply for renewal within 6 months prior to the expiry of the authentication letter. I think that's all, setting the background of the TCG program, Doctor. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Nazila. That was really great. Without wanting to take more time, I just want to introduce the second speaker. She's going to come up and talk to us from her experiences. Her name is Ms. Ruth James. She's a tax compliance officer at the Inland Revenue Commission of Papua New Guinea. Having served in various roles and institutions, Ms. James joined the Internal Revenue Commission in 2016 as a tax processing officer. She moved to the Taxpayer Services Division, where she mostly worked on tax education and awareness, and was recognized by the Commission as one of the 4 small business tax champions. Currently, she serves as a tax compliance officer, overseeing the end-to-end process for the small business in northern region of Papua New Guinea. Ladies and gentlemen, make welcome Ms. James.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, MRA and Cata, for the invitation to land. I came with 1 bag, and I'm pretty sure I will leave with 2 or more. I'm filled with sitting and listening to all the technology experiences, presentations that are shared, and I know I will return with plenty to share with my colleagues back home. With that, what I have to share may seemingly be a story of your past, but I am happy to share anyway. And I believe my colleagues have reached out to some of you to also hear from you and learn the experiences. Believing we are a team, and that defines the true meaning of this conference. I represent a country that has large informal sector. And the last session, session number 5, I was deeply engaged in it because I kind of saw where I would fit in and my country would fit in, because most of our population are engaged in the informal sector. So many of our people who would like to start out in business are not literate. The fear and burden of tax compliance requirements pushes them away from our tax office. Example, our corporate income tax and other filing obligations are burdensome. For simple startups to meet. Many of our people also in fear of banks to ask questions on individual sole traders on depositing their trade earnings. It was in that context that our government introduced small business tax regime. Firstly, to formalize the informal sector by issuing them or registering them for a TIN certificate, and also to reduce the filing burden for startups. It is in this way we intend to facilitate the growth of the emerging businesses. Small business tax regime was introduced in 2019 by the government, our government, and was launched in June 2021. And to date, we've registered almost 4,000 taxpayers with a total revenue of about 300,000. Yet again, compliance is a challenge with about 53% being non-compliant. And like I sat and was listening to all these experiences and ideas of how we can make our taxpayers, and especially small taxpayers, be compliant. I was very happy. Having said that, the IRC, Internal Revenue Commission, embarked on the enabling strategies. And we pretty saw that education outreach or tax and awareness is one of the key areas in which we make our small taxpayers know their tax obligations and comply. Next, collaboration with business associates or stakeholders, very important. But I want to touch on what we as tax officials do, and for the efforts, IRC's efforts around making these small taxpayers compliant. And I would like to share an experience here dealing with these small taxpayers. If it's not for me alone as a tax officer, maybe it's for you all as well. It could be that we as tax officials could be the reason why taxpayers are not coming forth. It could be from our approach to them. It could be from our presentations. It could be the office setup we have that can make them stay away from being compliant. Moving forward with what we've learned here, this was what I got from my Commissioner General before leaving. And this is his saying, we have learned the lessons and now we are considering how to take this forward. Small business tax address the sole traders, but we're also considering whether we could offer reliefs to incorporated companies and startups. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Ruth. That's very useful. Yes, I totally agree with you. The tax authority is the interaction, the front line of interaction with taxpayers. And so how the tax authority presents itself to the people really matters a lot. And that just sort of reminds me of what I talked about at the beginning regarding public perception and building trust. Okay, I won't say more. I just needed now to introduce our third speaker, Mr. Mohamed Faisal Uzurali. Faisal Uzurali is Director, Large Taxpayers Department of the Mauritius Revenue Authority. Faisal Uzurali is a fellow member of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, ACCA, and a holder of an MSc in Finance. He joined the Income Tax Department in 1995, has more than 25 years of experience in tax administration across a range of departments, and is currently the Director of Large Taxpayers Department and International Taxation Section of the Mauritius Revenue Authority. In that capacity, he is responsible for tax audits of large companies and deals with all issues pertaining to international taxation, including double taxation negotiations, implementation of BEPS action points, and exchange of information. Please make welcome Mr. Faisal Uzurali.
So thank you, Dr. Titilola, for the introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, Good afternoon, all protocol observed. The Mauritius Revenue Authority was set up in 2006, and ever since, numerous and several initiatives have been implemented to promote good governance and engage with business on tax governance standards. And one of those measures is the publication of a tax. Yes, and one of those measures is the publication of a tax governance guide. Now, that guide is aimed essentially for large taxpayers, but then any company, any entity can adopt that guide. And that guide relies on 6 building blocks or 6 pillars. So it says that you should have a tax strategy. So a company should align its strategy with current legislation, with regulation, with statement of practice, with guidance note, with best practice, and should avoid harmful tax planning. It should have tax role and responsibilities. So very often there are overlapping of tax role and responsibilities, and that creates gray area. For example, if salaries are paid, so who is responsible for the withholding of the tax, of the PAYE? Is it the finance department who pays the tax? Is it the HR who calculates the tax, or is it the tax department? So in this guide, the role should be clear and no gray area should be left. The tax risk management. So normally it's the board of directors who is responsible for the affairs of the company, and this includes the tax affairs of a company. But then it's the financial controller who submits the account, or the tax department, and very often the directors are not aware that return had not been submitted. It's only when enforcement action are taken or prosecution are undertaken, then the directors say, I was not aware that return have not been submitted. And then they are liable for penalties and for prosecution. So these should be cascaded to the board of directors. The return have been submitted, what has been declared. These should be cascaded to the board of directors. The tax reporting, whether in the annual accounts these are properly reported. These have been disclosed. The tax, all the element has been disclosed. What about the tax assurance? Whether you got a third party who give the assurance that what had been here, all has been declared properly. And the tax risk management, what are the risks? How do you mitigate the risks? So this guidance is to consolidate and enhance the company's relationship with the tax authority. It enhances the reputation of the company. And on the side of the MOE, this is mapped on the risk profile of that company. So it had adopted a tax governance guide, so it had mitigated its risk. Now, another aspect is when we talk about compliance. We talk about compliance at the registration level. We would like all taxpayers to be registered. We would like all the taxpayers who are registered, they submit their return if they are taxpayers, if they have tax to pay. And when they submit their return, they declared and paid the correct amount of tax. And this may be the most difficult to ascertain that they are effectively paying the correct amount of tax. And when they declare their tax, they effectively paid the tax, be it on the return or when a tax claim is made. So under these 4 processes, there is enhanced compliance activities that are undertaken. For instance, at registration, companies in Mauritius, all companies have to submit a return of income. So when a company is registered with the register of business and is allocated a business registration number, so seemingly at the MOA, it is provided with a tax account number. And then an email will follow to give some leaflet, to give some information, to explain the different tax type, when you have to submit the return, will explain on the VAT mechanism. And especially for the VAT mechanism, a monthly meeting is held with all first-time registration, so that these people will be the tax agent of the MOA. So at the first site, if you can learn, if you can educate them, then at start, then the input afterward will be more properly addressed. So leaflets are provided. Then when the submission of return, we got a simplified return for certain taxpayers. Those would be more taxpayers having a turnover below 2 million rupees. So, and maybe there is no withholding tax that has been made. So for this kind of taxpayers, a simplified return, and this will more encourage the informal sector to submit their return. Then another initiative is a presumptive tax return. So this is applicable to taxpayers having a turnover less than 10 million Mauritian rupees. So instead of going through the complexity of ascertaining what is chargeable income, what is taxable income, what are allowable deduction, so they can choose, they got an option, either they go the traditional way, or they choose a presumptive tax, which is 1% of their gross income. We also got reminders that we sent to the taxpayer. So 2 or 3 days before the deadline, they will receive a short message saying that in 2 or 3 days, this is the deadline, so you have to submit your return of income. So in Mauritius, the deadline quite recently was the 15th of October. So one of my neighbors just showed me a small message. Says that the MOA had sent me a message. So the MOA knows that I am a taxpayer, the MOA knows that I have not submitted my return, and the MOA knows that how much tax I need to pay. So maybe if you had not received that message, he would have submitted the return, but by receiving that message, you are sure that he will submit the return. So this creates also a deterrent. It assists the taxpayer, but it creates also a deterrent. Now, another initiative is the MOA e-tax account. So in the screen, you would have all what return have been submitted. You can download previous return. You can amend your return. Right? You can submit your return. And very soon also the tax, if ever you do tax, this also would be shown on that e-tax account number. So it is an interactive. The taxpayer can interact electronically with their MOA. And then you got the chat box. The chat box is the Myra. It is the name that we have provided to the virtual assistant. So Myra is very intelligent. He is very helpful. And then he's here to provide assistance to our taxpayer. And then also there are interactive sections that are made with, through the WhatsApp. So you can book an appointment on WhatsApp, and then you can interact with a tax official. You can discuss your tax affairs, have certain advice, certain clarification on certain technical aspects so that you can be better aware and compare with your tax obligation. Okay. Then it's also on self-assessment. So on self-assessment, we have a pre-filled return. We also have the expression of doubt, so that if someone have an expression on doubt on a particular item, so he can just indicate it on the return, then the MOA will come forward, and then there will be no interest and penalty. So I'm just late, so I will be a bit quicker. We got also incentive on the tax areas, and on the you can settle the tax areas, and there will be no interest and penalties. Another reach out of the MOA is on communication and education. So we had meeting with the stakeholders, we have workshop, we have awareness campaign that is being carried out. And then in the interest of time, I will finish with this last slide, which is we carry out an online taxpayer satisfaction survey. So this would be, we started in 2017, and this will be the 8th edition. So when they submit their return, they just give certain information on the services having provided, and this information is used to improve the service. So thank you all, and sorry for Titula for this time that I have taken. Thank you.
Doesn't work. Oh, it works. Right, thank you very much. Another round of applause for my panelists, please. Thank you so very much. Right, so I'm going to start with you, Faisal. You've told us about a number of measures and outreaches that you're doing to build the relationships with businesses. Can you share with us what part communications has played in all the stuff that you've been doing? So, for example, the BEPS action points. For example, the BEPS action points. Can you share with us some of the role that communication has played in the work that you've been doing?
Yes.
So thank you, Chair, for that question. In fact, Mauritius is a member of the OECD Inclusive Framework, and as such is committed to the BEPS minimum standard, that is the BEPS Action 5 on harmful tax practices, Action 6 on prevention of treaty abuse, and then on Action 13 and 14. So when we implement those BEPS measures, so we got certain regime that we have to abolish. And then those regimes have been here for years and years. So we had to engage with our stakeholders to make them understand. And this is one of my applications. I talk about having meeting with stakeholders, that is with the business industry, to explain them the purpose of bringing those changes and to listen to them, to hear what is the suggestion that they can have, because those standards were not only in Mauritius, it was across the globe, so other countries also were implementing those BEPS measures. And it's the same with BEPS Action 6, which is on prevention of treaty abuse. So in Mauritius, we got like 45 treaties, and then we have to make all those treaties BEPS compliant by amending the preamble and introducing the PPT provision, the principal purpose test. So a lot of engagement has been done with the business community to explain the rationale and to listen to them and to see how, and in some cases we have introduced grandfathering provision. So this had to be explained to them, and this had worked very well when we have those engagement with the business industry. And it's the same time it's the same thing with the exchange of information. So when we implement the automatic exchange of information, the CRS in 2018, and we know that with the CRS, we are getting information from the financial institution, but then it's the financial institution that had to carry out the due diligence. So when we engage with them, we carry out workshop at the seat of the MOA, we carried out workshop at the seat of their business, and whenever they carry out any workshop, always in that there was an item for a CRS. And this had paid very well, because when early this year, Mauritius had been subject to the OECD review on the effectiveness, and then we had a very good collaboration with the business community. And right now, we are having consultation in 2 areas with our stakeholders on the COF. In fact, Mauritius has taken commitment to start exchange of information on crypto asset by 2027. And then we are explaining, we are engaging with the business industry in that area. And the other area is the BEPS Action 1, the Pillar 1 and the Pillar 2. So on that global minimum tax, on that STTR, on amount A and amount B, we are having consultation, and we are also learning from them, because they also, within their network, they got certain technical information which we are sharing with them. So in a nutshell, those engagement with the business industry had been helpful and had been a win-win situation. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Faisal. So communications for your taxpayers so that they comply. Right, I'm going to move on to Ruth. Okay, so your SBT policy has introduced a simplified tax compliance regime. How, in practice, has this actually reduced the administrative burdens for small businesses? So what are their own efficiency gains in this? How is it making things easier for them? Ruth.
Thank you. Now, As stated, it's a simplified tax compliance regime, and especially for our small business taxpayers. We look at the threshold, and in PNG Kina, it's about 250,000 Kina. So any businesses below the threshold of 250,000, we categorize them as the small taxpayers. And then there's a fixed tax they get to pay of about 250 Kina annually. And there's the filing obligation is one time, 1 year, and it's a one-page, so single-page declaration they do. So in terms of reducing administrative burden, it's in a sense, you know, most of the taxpayers, tax in itself is big. And in order for them to be compliant with their obligations, most usually sought assistance from agents, and that in itself is costly to them. So with this new regime, they come forward, and we've been aggressively addressing, conducting one-to-one sessions and tax awareness, teaching the taxpayers how to file themselves and pay tax. So that's how, it has made, the small business tax regime has been made very simple for our small business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. So it sounds like below the threshold, it's just one rate for all the businesses below the threshold, and they do it once a year.
Correct.
Fantastic. So it's easier. They don't have to waste time, and I hope they don't have to travel far to make the payments. Can they do it online?
Oh, you touched on another topic. PNG is mountainous, and we have taxpayers coming in from all over the country. And it's, you know, word of mouth. So when they say, oh, we have a simple regime, we have people flocking in, business owners and small business owners flocking in from throughout. I believe one of those days you would come to see how hectic it is in terms of landscape back in PNG, but we do have taxpayers coming in from throughout the country to benefit from this low tax regime.
Excellent. So maybe the next step would be to make it online so they don't have to travel.
Yes,
Okay.
I think that's my lesson, and that's our lesson to take forth. So we're really looking into it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm now going to go to you, Nozila. So the tax corporate governance program is really interesting from what you've described. I am sure the lessons learned during the pilot phase and the full implementation, you know, were really insightful. Can you share some of those with us?
Thank you, Doctor. Basically, Malaysia, we ran our pilot project for the period of 2 years. Actually, it's been a roller coaster ride, roller coaster journey for both IRB and taxpayers, because it's first time for everybody. So we have a lot of engagement during the first few months with the participants. Like I said just now, we are offering the participants, basically, based on our records, we reach the compliant taxpayers and everything. So during that journey and those engagement with the participants and the authenticated participants, we saw a lot of things that we need to relook. First one is actually we found a different readiness and maturity level between organizations, depending on their size, depending on their available resources. So some are having a very good governance structure, supported with technology, but some others having governance structure, but it's been done manually without any technology. So without technology, sometimes human errors, right? You cannot really put control measures and everything. And some others does not have any. Does not have any. It's just, especially for family businesses, so the governance structure is lacking over there. So the next question arises actually what level of maturity are accepted to join the program. So we are responding this by updating our criteria to participate during the updates in 2024 for full implementation. Now, those who want to enter into the full implementation phase, they have to at least have established tax control framework. So the elements that they need to fulfill was there in the guidelines and also our framework. That's how we respond to the first issue. And the second one is actually group governance versus entity by entity governance. When you have a group of companies, they are keen to be authenticated as a group. So because they are referring to the same SOP, so they said, if you agree that this SOP is actually passing the adequacy review, then when effectiveness review, it should be also passed for the rest. But on our side, yes, you have the same SOP, but implementation will have human element. You will have other factors into it. So yes, we agree you pass the adequacy review based on your SOP, but effectiveness review still need to be done entity by entity level. So that's our response. The next is actually on the reporting and disclosure template. Taxpayers are expecting a complete template where they can follow when they do their self-review report, as well as the independent review report. But as we know, organizations have different size, you have different problems, you have different structures, including the transaction flow. We are not keen to have a specific template which is applicable to all. So what we did is actually we upgrade our guidelines to incorporate more elements that should be in the governance structure so that they understand where to put the elements within the organizational tax governance. And last but not least, during our pilot project, we are lacking of, like I said just now, everybody is having the first time experience. So we are using our tax auditors as a reviewer. So we have response that I don't feel like I'm entering into a TCG review program because your auditor is actually auditing us. The level of questions, the level of documentations that they're asking feels like I'm being audited instead of being reviewed for TCG. So what we did, actually, we sent our reviewer to a lot of trainings. We update our internal checklist for the TCG governance, and we are moving forward to have a special team as a reviewer so that they don't have the dual cap functions of auditor and reviewer. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nozila. It's a lot of stuff you're doing. But yeah, I think not trying to fit everybody into the same mold and use the same form for everybody might be a very good way to go. And then maybe tax auditors wearing two hats is not such a good idea, it seems. But yeah, thank you for that. So I'm going to come back to you now, Faisal. So the MRA seems to be doing a lot of support, to support taxpayers and their accountants. Nevertheless, I'm sure there may at times be disputes. Can you tell us how successful alternative dispute mechanisms, how have they been for the MRA? What has the experience been, those mechanisms?
Thank you, Doctor. So we had a mechanism which is called the alternative dispute resolution mechanism. So if a taxpayer had his case before the objection, in fact, when you get an assessment, you have a right for objection, and the objection department got a period of 4 months to determine that objection. And then, if you are not satisfied with that objection, you can appeal to the court, which we call a quasi-court, the assessment review committee. Now, when your case is either before the objection unit or the appeal stage, still you have the possibility to consider an alternative dispute panel. So this is a panel set up by the MRA. It is chaired by a director of the MRA, and it is assisted by a senior personnel and a barrister from the private sector. So this has been successful in the constitution that it is. So it is a blend of tax official and from the private sector. Now, the other characteristic that made it successful is that it is less formal than the court. So you can make your case, the taxpayer itself, and there is flexibility that the member have. They can reduce the penalty. They can waive up to 75% of the penalty. And the other possibility is for the taxpayer. This is alternative. So if he is not satisfied with the decision of the panel, still he can pursue the case at the level of the objection or the appeal. So basically, this has been successful, and nearly like all cases which has been referred to the panel, like 40% up to 50% had come to a settlement, and the tax in nearly like 70%, the tax has been settled within a period of 1 month.
Thank you very much, Faisal. So I'm going to come back to Ruth so that we don't run out of time. I won't comment on that. I'll come back to Ruth now and ask you to tell us a little bit more about the insights you've gleaned as you have worked with the small businesses. So how has it impacted compliance in practice? You've done a lot of work, engaging with them as stakeholders and all of that. But is there any, impact from all that work? What are you finding? What are you seeing is the effect on compliance?
Okay, thank you, Doctor, for that. Now, in response to that question, let me just share an experience. We have two regimes, the income tax regime, with all other taxes are under, the corporate and personal income tax under, and the small business tax regime. So how we've seen small business tax or SBT impacting compliance. Now, seeing the simplicity of the regime itself and the one return to file and the fixed tax rate that's applied, we're seeing taxpayers under the income tax regime requesting to switch into the SBT regime and benefit from the low tax rates that are there. So those who are actually registered under the income tax, but not making money, those are the ones we're beginning to get them to check the boxes before we get to switch them into SBT. So yes, we've seen interest in that, and it has actually promoted compliance in terms of them actually coming forward and making payments and paying their taxes. So yes, it has impacted. The small business tax has impacted compliance. Oh, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And then I will now go to my last question. I promise I'll come to the audience in a few minutes. Just one more question to the panel. Nozila, I'm sure there were also insights gathered during your implementation from the taxpayer's perspective, so not from your administration's perspective, but from the taxpayer's perspective. In particular, I wonder if you could share what you learned of taxpayers' readiness to participate in the program and how IRBM is responding to that.
In terms of the response during the pilot project, and we had a lot of seminars and workshop reaching out taxpayers. So basically, we can see mixed response. On the positive side, we do see a lot of increase in interest for the governance itself. They are reaching us, they are reaching the tax agents and everything to learn more about the tax corporate governance and the tax governance program. But on the other side, we also get some response of the pushing back from the leadership on entering the program due to several reasons. The first one is actually complacency. So we are doing good. We are doing great with the current governance. We have profit already. Why do we need to have a tax governance in the organizations? That one. And then when they are complacent, they are not willing to invest in technology, invest in appointing independent reviewer. So that's one. The second one is actually cost of compliance and the stretched resources. Basically, cost of compliance for them, for governance, is actually very high. The cost of independent reviewer itself is high because this is a new program. So everybody is actually looking towards the educations, and they need to relook on the overall governance structure of the organizations. So the cost is high. So they put a stop over there. And especially when we are actually having a mandatory program together, the mandatory is actually invoicing, and the new TP rules concentrating on the level of TP documentations, informations. So they are focusing their resources on the two programs for now. However, luckily, they are promising that the company is actually promising to really look into the participating into the TCG program in the next 1 or 2 years. So they're just pausing it. It's not a total no. And then the third one is actually pushback from leadership, trust issue. Are you sure you are going to review us and not using our information as an audit findings? So that's the kind of things that we are also facing. So moving forward, a way forward, how do we respond? Basically, short term, we are going to focus on promoting the governance and then educating the governance not only to the managerial level, we are targeting the board of directors itself so that they understand the importance of governance within the organization. And long term, basically, we are looking at the possibility whether we can make it mandatory for those who are really at the highly regulated industries like banking and insurance, like public listed, they already have some governance level that they need to achieve. So why not? You just put in another one, tax governance embedded into the organizations. That's a way forward. And of course, definitely, we are looking forward after a few years whether we can extend this program to SME, the small business.
Great, thank you very much. Now I will come to you. There's been so much shared here, and I think a lot of these things really speaking to how you engage with taxpayers with roller coaster, some success, but yeah, very interesting. So any questions for the panel? Just wave something. Ooh. Please.
I'm making the most of my last Cata conference. So this is a question about Malaysia's TCG program. And when you were looking for the 11 pilot companies to go into it, you mentioned some prerequisites. So my question is this: when you applied those prerequisites, did you have a pool of 11 companies, and that's why they were chosen? Or did you have a bigger pool of companies that you could draw from? In which case, how did you settle on the final 11? Was there some other consideration, like your relationship with the tax team in the corporate, for example? So that's my question.
Thank you. Shall I ask you to hold? If I could take a couple of questions before we come back here. So if you have any other question, if you just raise your hand, I'll take your question and then we'll swing back to the panel. Any other questions in the room? Yes, Dan.
So my question was in relation to the MRA, actually, and I was quite interested by the expression of doubt piece and just how effective you found that to be, how much interest from companies you found entering into that. So yeah, just interested to find out a little bit more.
Thank you. And the third question?
Yes, just to find out whether they could share experiences with perception of corruption from tax administrators and misapplication of tax revenue from the political side, and how they've been able to manage it.
Okay,
and also non-compliance from politically exposed persons.
Okay, so I'm going to swing back to the panel and start with Nozilla. Please answer John's question, and then over to you, Faisal. The third question, I think any one of you could speak to, so Nozilla.
So, going back to the criteria of participation, the prerequisite. Yes, we do have a pool of taxpayers which are entitled for the pilot project. But as I said earlier, it was based on invitation. So during the pilot project, we have a certain different criteria from the one that I share. We are looking for those who have won a Best Taxpayer Award. We are looking at the government-linked companies and everything that we believe having some sort of readily available governance inside the organization. So when we offer, basically, for your information, not everybody is actually accepting it. So some turns down the offer because they are having very limited resources, they want to allocate their resources to another issues and another important arrangement. So the 11 participants agreed to join the program, so we focus on that 11. Even though they are pre-selected, like I said, we have different level of maturity. So some of them is actually having very good compliant and high-level governance. For myself, it's actually, I'm very lucky because my first case was at the highest governance. So we can see everything over there. We can see how the escalation of the tax risk to the board of directors, how the tax strategy being set to be told to the employees, the communication between one department to another, not only the tax governance is not only rigidly within the tax division, but it's also communicated within the other business segments and everything. So that was my first experience. The governance, the highest level of governance need to be supported by technology. So everything is in there, the control is in there, so they can see with just one click, they know when is the due date, next due date, who's going to do the control, if anything went wrong, how are they going to escalate the issues to the IT department, for example, and everything, it was there. But some other participants during the pilot project, they are newly entering into the area of governance. So they ask us, what should we do? In which area should we upgrade our governance system? We do have the reporting, we do have the, okay, this is the preparer, this is the reviewer, this is the checker. But is that enough for tax governance? When you say you have to have a tax control framework, how does it embedded within the flowchart and the daily operational functions? So we have to sit with them because each companies are having different problem. So we need to really look at them and then, okay, this is the way. Basically, you have it, but you do not document it properly. Why don't you put it like this with the supporting documentations and you submit to us so we can see whether or not this kind of exercise is actually complementing the 6 principles that should be there in the governance structure.
Thanks, Nosila.
Thank you.
Over to you, Faisal, for the second question.
Thank you for that question. The expression of doubt provision was introduced some 5 years back, and there are several taxpayers who had been making use of that provision to express a doubt, either on the income side or on the expenses side, that is, whether those income are taxable or not, or whether those expenses are allowable or not. So we got both a mix of both of individual and company, and individual mostly those which have disposed property. In fact, in Mauritius, we do not have capital gains tax. And at some point in time, it is important to know that whether this is a capital gain or this is a revenue gain, which if it is a revenue gain, then it would be subject to tax. Capital gain, then there would be no tax. So maybe the taxpayer, it expressed a doubt that for the taxpayer, this is a capital income and would not be subject to tax. Then when this has been disclosed, the tax authority would have to engage with the taxpayer and analyze those facts to determine whether it is capital or revenue. We got equally some companies which have expressing doubt on certain item of expenditure, and we have reached out to them also. But it's also good to point out that this is a double edge, because if the company don't express the doubt, so this will remain like they can continue, maybe if the MOA would know after some years. But if they express the doubt right now, so we'll be coming to them. So we got some have been expressing, some have been using that provision, but some have not been doing it. But the advantage of having it is that we reach out to you, and then there would be no penalty and interest on any additional tax that would be imposed. Thank you.
Great. Now to the third question, which is from the gentleman from Ghana, I believe. Graft, corruption, selective enforcement. Do you have any thoughts on those, and how have you been tackling them, from your various experiences? I'll go to Ruth for that to start with. Ruth, do you have? Oh, so the question was from Ghana, the gentleman from Ghana. He was asking for any strategies or experiences that can be useful when it comes to tackling things like graft or corruption within the tax administration, or where enforcement is selective, so politically exposed individuals don't face enforcement. So do you have any experiences or any thoughts to share on that? And of course, I'm going to come to the others as well, so Ruth.
Thank you. That's a very good question. And small business tax regime, and I've been talking about that. It's fairly new. We haven't gone to the, more into what Dr. has mentioned, but this would be in terms of registration. I'll just say a bit on that. Now, the small business tax regime was introduced in 2021, and in the year 2022, we had the national elections underway. So what our politicians or the intended candidates did, they used that, fully being aware of the simplicity of the regime itself, they used that as an awareness or political awareness, I'd say, to gain votes and favor from the locals. So by way of telling them, oh, you get to register a business, formalize a business, and once I get in to be an MP, then I would, support you with your business. So that was one of the areas which we saw influx of applicants coming in and registering. And we're in the third year of the SBT. So whilst going through compliance calls, the very obvious reason for non-compliance we receive is, because so-and-so told us we have to register and get financial assistance. So that was a very challenging experience for us. And you've seen my slide about with the non-compliance registrants, about 53%. Much of that 53% is made up of those taxpayers who actually thought they would have a way out with being lucky or being supported by So the Internal Revenue Commission has already issued a notice for deregistration of teens of non-compliant taxpayers. And it's happening this year. Due date is about 29 November. So what we believe and we look into is that deregistration exercise will help to get rid of those taxpayers who thought they would find their way out, but get to see themselves more or less clogging our system. So I think response would be in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. Would you like to speak to this same question as well, Faisal?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question. In fact, at the Mauritius Revenue Authority, we got a department, the Fiscal Investigation Department, which deal with those cases. And those information on PEPs, politically exposed person, on corruption, those cases will be triggered to start an investigation. And also, we had an MOUs with the agency in charge of corruption, the Financial Crime Commission, and also the FIUs. So cases are referred and audit or carried out, parallel audit or carried out in those cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that speaks to quite a bit about your tax officers and their engagement, but perhaps not so much to politically exposed people or very influential people and how you tackle enforcement with them. But I'll pause on that and go back to the floor to see if we have any more questions. Any more questions from the floor? Since it appears we don't have any, I will come back to the panel. And if you have any further comments on the enforcement side of things or any experiences to share, just let me know. Otherwise, I'll invite you to give your closing statement. So what are the very key things that you want us all to go away with? Okay, Nozilla.
Well, thank you. Basically, when we talk about, my part is actually about governance, right? So when we talk about governance, before we reach this good governance and everything, definitely the compliance activities need to be in place first. So like the rest, when we do exercise in Malaysia, basically we streamline everything into audit and investigations, and we differentiate it by way of the engagement activities. At the same time, we focus on educations first. A lot of educational activities given to the taxpayers, so that we hope with establishing the education and then the enforcement by way of audit and investigation, hence we can approach and tackle the high compliance taxpayer by way of good governance and tax corporate governance. That's it.
Thank you. Ruth.
Thank you. I touched a little on that, but I'll stress on it again. The enabling strategies which I discussed, but I would like to here talk about what we as tax officials are doing. It's just a concern from directly dealing with the small taxpayers, because when we look at the large and medium taxpayers, they have the knowledge, they have the capacity to find their way around. They even have, they can find their way around with filing and paying their taxes. When we talk about the small taxpayers, these are people who are actually struggling out there to make ends meet for themselves as well as paying taxes. And it could be you and me as tax officials not being out there reaching out to them to be compliant with their taxes. So that's something which I would want us all, probably if you've been doing it, that's good, but if we haven't been doing it, those in the front lines could be the ones chasing these taxpayers away. So that would be a message I want to leave with us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth, and over to you, Faisal.
Yes, in 2 words, I would say that engagement with your taxpayer and maintaining the communication line are key element for promoting voluntary compliance. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So if I just summarize all of that, education, 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 enforcement through audit, tailoring to the small business needs and ensuring that they have good experience of the tax authority, so that builds trust. And finally, communication, so raise taxpayers' awareness. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. It's been wonderful. A round of applause for this wonderful panel, please.
Thank you, Dr. Titilola, for this well-moderated session. Experts, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, our experts have shed light and surely enhanced our understanding on the fundamental principles of good governance in tax administrations. They have emphasized on the importance of transparency, accountability, and engagement with our stakeholders. Indeed, from the setting up of tax governance standard framework for large taxpayers, the designing of compliance assistance program for small taxpayers, and engagement of the business community to tax governance standards, it's clear that a collaborative approach is of paramount importance for promoting good governance in tax administration.
A heartfelt thank you to our esteemed speakers for their invaluable contributions, and to all of you for your active participation and thought-provoking questions. Your engagement has made this discussion richer and much more impactful. We shall now proceed with the token of appreciation, and may we please call upon on stage Mr. Hassan Zahir, Commissioner of Maldives Revenue Authority, Member of Management Committee and Regional Director for Asian Region. So please welcome Mr. Hassan Zahir. So the first token will go to Ms. Titi Lola, our moderator for this session. Then to our first presenter, Ms. Nurzi Rahmat Arbag. Next token will be to Ms. Ruth James. And finally to Mr. Mamad Faisal Uzirali. Please come forward for a group session photo, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before we move forward with our agenda for today, ladies and gentlemen, you know, there's a special event today. On behalf of Cata Secretariat, may we please wish our Zambian delegates a very happy Independence Day. It's been 60 years that Zambia has got its independence, so this surely calls for a celebration. And Zambian delegates, tonight we wish to see you all for a cultural dance or song for the Cata night. May I now please call upon Ms. Yashvi, my MC colleague, who will now proceed with the closing remarks for today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Can we please?
ladies and gentlemen, esteemed delegates and honored guests, as our conference draws to a close, it is my absolute pleasure to invite on stage eminent personalities who will deliver their closing remarks. Today and during this week, we have engaged in meaningful discussions, shared valuable insights, and fostered good relationships that undeniably will help our collective efforts in tax administration. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our first speaker, Cata's Executive Director, Dr. Esther Koisin, for her closing remarks.
I hope you haven't got enough of me yet, okay? But this is really very necessary. As we draw this remarkable conference to a close, again, I stand before you with a deep sense of gratitude for your contributions in making the 44th Cata Annual Technical Conference here in Mauritius a resounding success. Over the past few days, we have had a highly productive conference and enjoyed the exceptional hospitality of our host, Mauritius. My heartfelt thanks go to the government of Mauritius and the Mauritius Revenue Authority for hosting such an outstanding conference. Mr. Lal, the dedication and hard work of your team were evident in every detail of the preparation, making the conference a memorable and enriching experience for all of us in attendance in this conference. I deeply appreciate the significant amount of time and resources you and your team invested to ensure the success of this conference. I hope my heartfelt thanks reaches every single member of your team, including those behind the scene, those that I have not reached out and shook their hands and give them a hug. I feel like if I could, I will hug every one of them. I'm deeply touched with the level of dedication of the team of Mauritius, and I think the next host is going to have a difficult time matching the hospitality that we have received from Mauritius. So please help me once again put our hands together for Mr. Lal and his team. We had incredibly insightful panel and working group discussions. This success would not have been possible without the wholehearted commitment of all delegates of the conference. I extend my profound gratitude to all the speakers, keynote speakers, moderators, and speakers, panelists of the plenary session, chair, vice chair, experts, board, and rapporteurs, and all of you who had made this conference such a successful conference that I would remember forever. The questions, comments, and interactions have sparked meaningful conversation and added immense value to our sessions. Your active participation and engagement have been vital to the success of this conference. Thank you very much. I am very pleased with the outcome of the Commissioners Connect as well, although there are not many, but it's a promising start. I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the heads of tax administrations for their support, which made the first face-to-face Commissioners Connect such a promising start. This session was particularly important as it provided a valuable opportunity for heads of tax administration to meet with their counterparts and develop cooperation. And there is a promise that this is just a starting, and next year we will have a special program for the commissioners and regional directors and all of you here. We are promising that we are going to have a more commissioners engagement in Cata. Once again, I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the newly elected president, chairman, vice chairman, and members of the Cata Management Committee. The Secretariat eagerly anticipate working very closely with each and every one of you. To everyone, thank you once again for being part of this conference. While the official program concludes this afternoon, I am excited to invite you to our Cata night this evening. It promises to be a delightful experience, showcasing the rich heritage of all our members. Additionally, I encourage you to join the sightseeing tour that our hosts kindly organized for our outing tomorrow, offering a wonderful opportunity to explore the beautiful Mauritius. I wish you all safe travels and look forward to welcoming you to our next annual technical conference in 2025. Thank you.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll now hear from our newly elected president of Cata, Mr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin. The president brings fresh perspectives and innovative ideas, and we look forward to hearing how he plans to guide us in the coming years. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to our president.
Mr. Sudamullah, Cata Chairman, Director General of Mauritius Revenue Authority, Mrs. Debbie Locke, Cata Vice Chairman, Dr. Esther Koisin, Cata Executive Director, honored guests, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First and foremost, I would like to extend our sincere congratulations to Mr. Sudamullah, our new Cata Chairman, and Mrs. Debbie Locke, our Vice Chairman. My gratitude also extends to the newly elected Cata Management Committee, regional directors, and country representatives. I must also take this moment to thank Dr. Zaid Adedeji and Mr. John Swetlow, our outgoing President and Vice Chairman, for your dedicated service and invaluable guidance during your tenure. A heartfelt thanks to the Mauritius Revenue Authority and the Government of Mauritius for hosting this remarkable event here in Mauritius, the pearl of the Indian Ocean. The beauty of this island has certainly added a unique charm to our time together, and we are grateful for the warm hospitality extended to all of us. This setting has not only facilitated productive discussion, but also allowed us to experience the vibrant culture of this incredible country. To the organizing committee, led by Mr. Lal and your wonderful team, and the entire Cata Secretariat, your dedication and efforts have ensured the smooth running of this conference. We truly appreciate all your hard work. Over the past few days, we have engaged in meaningful discussion, gaining insight into reshaping tax administration in a rapidly changing world. I thank all member countries, speakers, and experts from international organizations for their significant contribution to this fruitful exchange. As we conclude this conference, one of the key topics we discussed was the importance of embracing technology, promoting voluntary compliance, and enhancing taxpayer services. These are challenges that affect every member country, and I'm confident that the solution we have explored will have a lasting impact on our administration. Now, as we return to our respective countries, I encourage each of you to implement the strategies and lessons learned here. Cata or Dr. Esther will be by your side, supporting you in translating this idea into actionable steps that will strengthen your tax system. During the general meeting, we took significant steps to ensure Cata future sustainability by approving a new membership subscription fee structure. This structure was designed with fairness in mind, ensuring that the financial contributions are distributed equitably among all member countries. It is critical that each of us, every Cata member, supports and adheres to this new fee structure. By ensuring that every member contributes their fair share, we are safeguarding the future of our association. A financially sustainable Cata will be in a better position to deliver on our ambitious and impactful work program, allowing us to continue addressing the challenges faced by our respective tax administration. Equally important, the General Meeting approved a debt recovery and reset policy to address the long-standing issue of unpaid membership fees. This policy is not just about recovering arrears, it is about re-engaging with members who have ceased to pay their dues. Without full participation and timely payments from all member countries, Cata's ability to execute its strategic plan will remain limited. This will also place an undue burden on those members who continue to meet their financial obligation, while limiting our capacity to provide critical support to smaller and vulnerable states. I urge all member countries to commit to this new policy. By honoring our commitments We are enable Cata to remain independent, ambitious, and ready to meet the needs of all its members. As we move forward, I believe one of the greatest strengths of Cata is its spirit of collaboration and teamwork. Together, we can achieve the vision of Tax Administration 3.0, a vision that promotes effective management, clear communication, and unified responses to global tax challenges. My hope is that all member countries are ready to embrace this vision, ensuring that no one is left behind as we strive for a modern and resilient tax administration. Honored guests, ladies and gentlemen, finally, I want to thank all of you for your active participation and your valuable contribution over the past few days. A special thank you to Mr. Sam Coyne, Commissioner General of the Internal Revenue Commission of Papua New Guinea, for hosting the next Cata Technical Conference. Safe travels, and I look forward to seeing all of you there as we continue our journey of learning, collaboration, and progress. And before I end, I would like to take a moment to express my personal gratitude. Thank all of you for your trust in Malaysian leadership, and I'm deeply honored to take on the new responsibility as Cata President. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jamaluddin, for that very strong message. We wish you success in all your endeavors as Cata's new president. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now move on. I have the absolute pleasure of inviting our last, but definitely not the least speaker of the day. I would like to call upon Cata's new chairman, the Director General of the Mauritius Revenue Authority, Mr. Sudhamulal, on this stage. With a wealth of experience and a commitment to achieving the standards of excellence in tax administration, we have the pleasure to hear from our Director General about his closing remarks about our conference and his vision for the future. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Sudhamulal.
Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin, the President of the Cata, Ms. Deborah Locke, the new Vice Chair of Cata, Dr. Esther Hossain, Executive Director of Cata, Commissioners of Tax Administrations, members of MRA Management Team, distinguished experts and delegates, Cata and MRA officials, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. No duty is more urgent than giving thanks. As the curtain falls on this insightful and enriching 44th Cata Technical Conference, I feel honored to deliver the concluding speech. In fact, I must say that it's a special occasion for me as I'm addressing you in two different capacities. First, as the new chairperson of Cata, thanks to your trust and support. Second, I am delivering the vote of thanks as a host of this technical conference. Marcel Proust once said, and I quote, "Let us be grateful to the people who make us happy. They are the charming gardeners who make our souls blossom. Allow me to express my gratitude to all the distinguished delegates who blessed us with their presence and ensured the success of this conference in Mauritius. During the last 3 days, we have had the opportunity to see so many stimulating panel presentations, animated interactions with panelists and experts, and more importantly, learn from the practical experience of other tax administrators and administrations. My appreciation goes to the chairs of the different panel sessions, the speakers, moderators, panelists, and discussants. I have witnessed lively discussions which were really engaging, offering us new perspectives and ideas. That's what the Cata Technical Conference is made for. This year, a new touch was given to the Cata Technical Conference with the inclusion of a new session known as the Commissioners Connect, meant especially for the revenue commissioners. In the first meeting, we have focused on issues like adapting to new work concepts such as work from home, building trust and monitoring performance, retaining talent and building capacity in tax administrations. I am grateful to Dr. Easter, the Executive Director of Cata, for this new initiative. It will remain as a landmark that the Commissioners Connect was incorporated for the first time in a Cata conference in Mauritius, and I feel really proud of it. Thank you, Dr. Easter. Ladies and gentlemen, the organization of such a conference does not happen overnight. The wheels start rolling months before. When Mauritius expressed its interest to host the event on its soil, it requires a lot of planning and a bird's eye for detail. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of motivated and dedicated officers. To our dedicated organizing committee, headed by Mr. Ramdeen, supported by Mr. Tilakdari, I would not probably be able to take all the names because then that will comprising volunteer officers. Thank you all for your tireless efforts and meticulous planning. Your hard work behind the scenes has ensured the smooth execution and success of this conference. A big thank also to the technical team present here for all their assistance for the smooth running of the conference. As I mentioned in my opening speech, the success of such types of conference is the result of close cooperation and collaboration among several institutions. It's my pleasure to express my deepest appreciation to the Cata Secretariat, led by Dr. Easter, for its collaboration and guidance in the organization journey to this conference. My gratitude also goes to the IMF, OECD, CIAT, ICTD, ETAF, and IBFT, amongst others, for their support in providing their resource persons to enrich this conference. This year, the general meeting was also held on the sidelines to this conference and the election of a new Cata Management Committee. I take the opportunity to congratulate members of the new committee, and I am confident that they will bring Cata to further new heights. I am convinced that each one of us has a lot of take back home and assist in reshaping their tax administration. As the new chairperson of Cata, I believe that we need to create a feedback loop after each technical conference. I would therefore invite all our distinguished colleagues, particularly through their Cata correspondent, to share dedicated articles on the implementation of new processes, procedures, or policies that emanate from the discussions and presentations made at this technical conference. During your stay here, I do hope you have all been enjoying the Mauritian hospitality and also had the opportunity to move around despite the busy schedule to enjoy the beaches and beautiful scenery of Mauritius. In concluding my vote of thanks, allow me to express in our language, Senekun or Roara, meaning it is just a goodbye. We shall be meeting again next year in Papua New Guinea, thanks to the Commissioner General for the 44th Cata Technical Conference. Till then, take good care of yourself, and I wish you all a safe journey back home. Thank you for your attention. And now, I, as Chairman Cata, declare the conference closed.
Thank you, Mr. Sudamulal, for the inspiring words and words of appreciation. We have a token of appreciation for you on behalf of Cata. To do the honors, may I please request Cata's President, Dr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin, to please join us on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our President on stage. Thank you. We have a token of appreciation for our Chairman of Cata, to be handed over by the President of Cata. Ladies and gentlemen, with a round of applause, please. Thank you, Dr. Jamaluddin. Thank you, Mr. Sudamulal.
Ladies and gentlemen, now Mr. Sudamulal, the new chairman of Cata, our Director General, would also wish to present some gifts to, first of all, the President of Cata. You have to come back, sir. Mr. Abu Tariq Jamaluddin, please. Thank you. Next is Ms. Debbie Locke, the new Vice Chair of Cata. Please. We now have the pleasure to call Dr. Esther Koisin, Executive Director of Cata Secretariat. Then, may we also call upon Mr. Zarir Hassan, Commissioner of Maldives Revenue Authority, member of Cata Management Committee and Regional Director of Asian Region. Please. DG is asking for another round of applause. Thank you, Dr. Kosin. May we also now call upon a representative of Papua New Guinea to represent Mr. Sam Coyne, Commissioner General. I will also call upon a representative from Lesotho to receive a gift from Mr. Sudamulal. Please. Last but not least, Mr. John Swallow, ex-Vice Chair of Cata. Mr. John. Or a representative. Mr. Dan, who will wish to? Okay, please. Madam. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we almost reached an end to our session, but before that, we have some announcement to make. Allow me to lead Yashvi for that.
Ladies and gentlemen, it was truly an honor and privilege to serve as your Master of Ceremony for these 3 days conference. Myself, my colleagues, Mokshada and Lodasen. This marks the end of our Cata conference, but the day is not yet over because tonight we are burning the dance floor. I cannot wait to see you all in your cultural shows and having fun. Ladies and gentlemen, tea will now be served, but before that, I have a few announcements. You must have seen papers circulating containing details regarding your departure flights. Please do not lose on those papers. These are very important. Should you need any further information, please contact your liaison officers or Mrs. Aruna Mugan. Details regarding tomorrow's catamaran outing will be displayed soon on the screen here regarding pickup times and contact numbers of your drivers. And for those who will unfortunately miss the catamaran outing tomorrow because of their flights being tomorrow, so we have prepared a small outing for you. Any further details, if you wish to be part of that outing, which will be in Port Louis in the main market, please contact respective liaison officers. They will guide you through it. With this, ladies and gentlemen, tea is now being served. Enjoy yourselves. See you all tonight in your best outfits. Cheers.